My own daughter pushed me off a cliff. As I lay on the ground with broken bones and blood running down my face, I heard my husband whisper, "Don't move, Margaret. Pretend you're dead." The most painful thing wasn't the fall of about 100 feet, but the secret our daughter had kept for 2 decades that finally came to light. But before continuing, check if you've already subscribed to the channel, and write in the comments where you're watching this video from. We love to know how far our stories reach. I never thought that at 58 years old I would have to pretend to be dead to escape from my own children. For 35 years I believed I had built a perfect family. Every morning began with the aroma of fresh coffee, and the distant whisper of Denver's mountains in the distance. I worked as a high school literature teacher, while Robert crafted handmade furniture in his workshop. We had 2 children, David, our firstborn, charismatic and protective, and Emily, 5 years younger, always reserved and observant. On Sundays we sat around the table Robert had carved with his own hands. David spoke enthusiastically about his dream of becoming an architect, while Emily played with her food, avoiding our eyes. At night, Robert and I walked together along the beach in Miami Beach, planning our retirement and the trips we would take once our children followed their own paths. I felt happy, or at least I believed so. Everything changed one September night exactly 20 years ago. David never returned home after going out with his friends. We waited until dawn, desperately calling everyone we knew. Emily stayed in her room saying she was studying, but her attitude seemed strange to me. Robert went out with some neighbors to look for our son. At sunrise they found his body at the bottom of a ravine near the beach in Miami Beach. The police concluded it was an accident, that he had probably slipped in the dark. I never questioned that version. How could I have imagined the truth? The funeral was the darkest day of my life. I wore the same black dress I had worn at my mother's burial. Emily appeared surprisingly calm while I broke down in tears. Robert held me tightly when my legs gave out. Now I understand why he seemed to carry a burden even heavier than the loss of our son. After David's death, my daughter changed completely. She became attentive and affectionate, helped with the housework, and spent more time by our side. I interpreted it as her way of coping with grief, of filling the void her brother had left. The years went by and Emily married Michael, a quiet man from a town near Dallas. They had 2 beautiful children, and for a moment I felt that life was giving us a second chance. Michael called me Mom, and Emily had followed in her father's footsteps by opening her own furniture workshop. Our family seemed rebuilt, but now, lying at the bottom of that ravine with broken ribs and the metallic taste of blood in my mouth, I understood that happiness had only been a carefully crafted lie. The first signs that something was wrong began a few months ago, when Robert and I decided to update our will. Between our beachfront house, the land I had inherited from my parents, and our savings, we had around $100,000 to leave as inheritance. It was Emily who insisted we consult a lawyer. "Mom, Dad, you're already over 55, it's important to put everything in order," she said with a smile that I now remember as sinister. Michael was at her side, squeezing my hand with the same fingers that would later push me to my death. "We love you so much and want to make sure you're protected," added the lawyer in a gentle voice. Dr. Miller, whom we had known for years, explained our options: creating a trust fund, dividing the inheritance among the grandchildren, or making a traditional will. Emily insisted that she and Michael be the sole heirs. "We'll make sure to divide it fairly for the children," she argued. "Besides, when you get older, you'll need us. It would be better if we had access to the resources to take proper care of you." Her tone made me uncomfortable, but Robert, more trusting than I was, accepted without much resistance. I had doubts, especially because I remembered how David always said he would support us financially in old age. But David was no longer there, and Emily was our only living child. We signed the documents on a Thursday afternoon. Michael wore an impeccable suit and hugged me for a long time after the signing. "Now we're officially a family united forever," he whispered in my ear. His words sent an inexplicable shiver down my spine. That night, while preparing dinner, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had made a terrible mistake. The following weeks were strange. Emily and Michael began visiting us more often, but not just to spend time together. Their visits always brought suggestions about how to improve the house, what investments to make, or what life insurance policies to take out. "Mom, you should think about selling this big house and moving into a smaller place," Emily told me while looking at our furniture with calculating eyes. "We could help you find a comfortable apartment in downtown Dallas." But I loved my house. Every corner held memories of our 35 years together. The kitchen where I had cooked countless meals, the workshop where Robert created his pieces, the yard where our children and later our grandchildren played. I couldn't imagine my life anywhere else. When I told her that, I saw a flash of irritation in her eyes that froze my blood. "Mom is being irrational," she said in a tone she had never used with me. "This house is too big for two people your age. If you fall down the stairs or something happens, we won't be able to help you in time." Michael nodded vigorously. "Besides, the maintenance must cost a fortune. It would be smarter to sell now while the real estate market is booming." Robert began to consider their arguments, but I couldn't shake the feeling that behind that pressure there was something more. One night, after another of those tense conversations, I asked Robert if he didn't find it strange that Emily was so interested in our finances. "Margaret, she just cares about us," he replied while brushing his teeth. "Maybe we should think about what she's saying. We're not as young as we used to be," he added. But in his eyes I saw a shadow of doubt he didn't want to admit. Today I know Robert had already begun to suspect that he had started putting together pieces I still couldn't see. Everything worsened when Emily suggested we give her power of attorney over our finances. "It's just a precaution," she explained, while Michael brewed tea in our kitchen as if he already owned the house. "If either of you gets sick or has a health problem, we can manage your affairs without legal complications." His tone sounded so natural it almost convinced me, but something in his insistence made me nervous. That night I could not sleep. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, listening to Robert's breathing at my side, wondering why I felt so unsettled. The next day I decided to call my sister Susan for advice. She had always been sharper than I was, more suspicious of other people's intentions. When I told Susan about the pressure from Emily, she was silent for a long time and then said, "Doesn't it seem odd to you that Emily is so eager to control your money? She has her own business. She's fine financially. Why would she want so much control over your accounts?" Her words hit me like a slap. She was right. Emily had never before shown signs of financial trouble. She didn't ask for loans or act like she needed help. That afternoon, when she came again to talk about our future, I decided to confront her directly. "Daughter," I began, sitting on the porch, "why do you care so much about having control over our financial affairs? Your father and I are still of sound mind." Her reaction was immediate and revealing. Her expression hardened. I saw something cold and calculating in her eyes that I had not perceived until then. "Mom, it's not about control," she answered in a tense voice. "It's about love, care, and family responsibility." But the way she said family responsibility sounded more like a threat than affection. Michael, who had until then remained silent, spoke up in a calm voice. "Margaret, we only want what's best for you. It breaks our hearts to see you worry about things we can handle." That night, after they left, Robert and I had our first serious argument in years. He thought I was being paranoid and looking for trouble where there was none. I insisted that something was wrong, that Emily's behavior had changed too much. "Do you remember how she was before David died?" I asked Robert as we washed the dishes. "She was a different person, more distant, colder." Robert put down the plate and stared at me. In his eyes I saw an acknowledgement I had never seen before. "Margaret," he said in a low voice, "there are things about David's death I never told you." My heart leapt. Antonio's words struck me like lightning. "What things?" I asked, my voice trembling. Robert sat down heavily. He began to recount the night David died. Emily was not in her room studying as she had told us. He saw her leave the house around 8 o'clock. Robert followed her because her attitude had seemed strange. She was more aggressive and resentful. He found them arguing near the ravine. "I heard them shouting horrible things at each other," he said. Tears welled in his eyes, tears he had not shed even at our son's funeral. The argument was about money. Emily was furious because by our customs, David, as the firstborn, would inherit the largest share. But there was more. David had discovered that Emily was stealing. "What money?" I asked, feeling the ground open beneath my feet. Robert took a deep breath and continued. Days before he died, he brought papers to the workshop. He had bank statements. He had discovered small withdrawals, then larger amounts. He had been investigating for months. The truth was impossible for me to accept. The daughter who had shown so much care after the funeral had been stealing from us even before her brother died. Why didn't you ever tell me? I reproached him. Because when I got to the ravine it was already too late, he answered in a choked voice. Robert remembered finding Emily next to David's body, crying and repeating that it had been an accident. She begged him for help. Dad, she said. He told me that David tried to hold on and slipped. In the confusion he lost his balance. I wanted to believe him. Robert nodded with guilt. She was our daughter, he murmured. She asked me for help and David was already dead. I did not know what to do. I could not bring one back by destroying the other. I thought it had been an accident and that Emily would change. And the stolen money? I demanded to know. She never returned it, Robert said. On the contrary, she kept taking small amounts that I pretended not to see. Confronting her would have been admitting we covered up a homicide. I became an accomplice. Every silence of mine, every time I looked away as the accounts dwindled, made me more complicit. I began to see the reason behind her interest in controlling our finances. It was not out of love. It was to finish what she had started 20 years ago. There's more, Robert said afterward. He went to his desk and pulled out some hidden papers. He explained that he had been secretly investigating Emily's accounts. Her workshop was not doing well. It was on the brink of collapse and she owed more than about $22,000 to banks and suppliers. The figures trembled in my hands. Emily was not the successful businesswoman she appeared to be. She was living on lies and money taken over the years. Does Michael know all this? I asked, remembering his smile and warm embrace. Surely, Robert answered. He steers many conversations about our money. He asks specific questions about the savings, the value of the house, and the policies. Those are not innocent questions. He calculates exactly how much our death would be worth. That idea chilled me to the bone. If she was capable of causing her own brother's death for money, what would stop her from harming us? I took Robert's hand. We have to go to the police, I said. With what proof? He answered in despair. I am an accomplice in covering up a homicide. If I speak now, I could go to jail too. And who would believe a man of 60 who kept quiet for 20 years? He was right. Then we considered the worst option, to wait for them to kill us as they did David. Let's be very careful, Robert said in a forced voice. We are going to gather evidence. At that moment the phone rang. It was Emily. Hi, Mom, she said in that sweet voice that now sounded sinister. Michael and I thought it would be lovely to celebrate your 35th wedding anniversary with something special. How about we take you to a lookout in the Rocky Mountains next weekend? We could go for a family hike, take pictures, and spend a perfect day together. I felt my blood run cold. I looked at Robert, who had heard the conversation. His face showed the same terror as mine. That's a very sweet idea, dear, I managed to reply in a shaky voice. But let us think about it and we'll call you tomorrow. When I hung up, Robert and I looked at each other in silence, aware that we had just received an invitation to our own execution. The lookout, I murmured. They want to take us there to kill us and make it look like an accident. Robert nodded gravely. That night we could not sleep. We stayed holding each other, planning how to escape from our own daughter. The following days were a nightmare of fear and deception. We had to pretend everything was normal when Emily and Michael came to visit. We smiled as we listened to them talk excitedly about the trip, nodding at every comment, even though I was overwhelmed by fear. I knew I was looking into the eyes of the people responsible for my son David's death, and who now planned to do the same to Robert and me. On Thursday afternoon, Michael arrived with a new backpack, and that calm smile that seemed like a sociopath's mask. Dear Margaret, he said, hugging me with the same arms that would soon push me to my death. I bought provisions for the hike to the lookout, water, fruit, sandwiches, everything needed for the picnic. He showed me the contents of the backpack like an excited child, but I only thought about how each item could be used to cover up our murder. I also brought my new camera, he added, showing an expensive device. I want to capture every moment of this special day. They will be memories we keep forever. The irony of his words churned my stomach. The only photo that would be taken would be of our bodies wrecked at the bottom of a ravine. Soon Emily appeared with brand new hiking gear. "Dad," she told Robert with false enthusiasm, "I bought everything necessary for a safe hike: ropes, flashlights, a first aid kit." Each word sounded like a cruel mockery. Safety gear? It was the perfect plan to disguise a crime. "Isn't this a bit dangerous for people our age?" I asked, trying to sound casual, looking for an excuse to cancel the trip. Emily stroked my cheek with a false tenderness that made my stomach turn. "That's why we picked an easy, safe trail," she assured me. "It's a path even children can do. Besides, Michael and I will take care of you the whole time." Yes, they would take care of us until the moment they decided to push us into the void. When they finally left, Robert and I sat on the porch, trembling with cold and terror. "We can't go," I said, clutching his hands. "And what excuse will we make?" he replied in a grave voice. "If we don't go, they'll find another way to kill us, maybe something that looks more accidental. A fire or a robbery. At least at the lookout we know what they will try." His words made sense, but they did not soothe me. "So what do you suggest?" I asked desperately. Robert was silent for a few minutes and then answered, "We'll go, but prepared. I'll hide my phone and set it to record everything. If we survive, we'll have proof. And if not," his voice broke, "at least someone will know the truth." On Friday night we barely touched our dinner. We knew it could be our last meal in that house, in that kitchen full of happy memories. Robert reviewed his will one more time, making sure that if something happened to us, Emily could not take everything without a record of our suspicions. "I wrote a letter," he confessed, showing me a sealed envelope. "It's addressed to your sister Susan. In it I explain what we know about David's death, and what we believe Emily is planning now. I hid it in the bank safe deposit box. If we don't come back, she'll know where to look for the truth." That night we went to bed holding each other, whispering words of love that might be our last. "If something happens to me," Robert said, "I want you to know that these 35 years with you have been the best of my life. I love you more than my own life." I wept quietly, memorizing his breathing, the warmth of his body, the smell of his skin. Saturday dawned with a blue sky that seemed to mock our situation. Emily arrived early, whistling cheerfully as if it were a day of celebration. "Good morning, lovebirds," she shouted from the door. "Ready for the big adventure?" Michael appeared behind her, radiant as if it were the happiest day of his life, though in reality it was an encounter with death. During breakfast, which we could barely taste, Emily explained the route in detail. "It's a beautiful trail," she said, spreading out a map. "It leads to a lookout from where you can see the whole Bay of San Diego. The view is spectacular." Her eyes sparkled with an unsettling intensity. Of course, those views would be the last we ever saw. "The trail has some steep sections," Michael added as if giving tourist advice. "But nothing hikers like you can't handle." That sounded like a cruel irony. We were two older people who barely walked along the beach from time to time. While we loaded the car, I saw Emily carefully checking her backpack, making sure nothing was missing for their plan. I saw ropes, a small shovel, and what looked like a signal flare. "What's that for?" I asked. "For safety," she answered without hesitation. "If we get lost or something happens, we can send a signal." Yes, they would send a signal after pushing us off the cliff, so they would find the bodies and everything would look like an accident. Every detail was planned so our murders would appear natural. The drive to the Rocky Mountains took almost 3 hours. 3 hours that seemed endless. Michael played cheerful music and sang as if we were truly on a family outing. Emily drove carefully, obeying every sign and speed limit. She didn't want to ruin their plans with an unforeseen accident. During the trip, Robert squeezed my hand and turned on the recorder on his phone. Everything that happened from that moment would be recorded. If we survived, it would be the proof. If not, at least the truth would not die with us. Arriving at the trailhead, my heart beat so hard it felt like it would leap out of my chest. The place was beautiful, with tall trees and the sound of a waterfall in the distance. But for me it wasn't a paradise. It was the stage for my execution. Emily and Michael took their backpacks down from the car, smiling and joking as if nothing could ruin their perfect day. "Ready for the adventure?" Emily asked. For the first time in 20 years I saw in her eyes the same cold gleam she must have had the night David died. The trail started off easy, winding through leafy trees and moss-covered rocks. Michael walked ahead, taking photos and commenting on the beauty of the landscape. "Look at those wildflowers," he exclaimed, pointing to bushes full of purple blooms. "And that rock formation, incredible." His performance was perfect, the doting son-in-law enjoying a special day with his in-laws. Emily walked behind us, supposedly so we wouldn't fall behind, but I could feel her gaze stabbing my back like knives. Every time I turned to look at her, she gave me a smile she had perfected over 20 years of lies. "How do you feel, Mom and Dad?" she asked with fake concern. "Do you want to rest a bit?" After an hour of hiking, we reached a steeper section. My legs felt heavy and Robert was struggling to breathe. We weren't used to that kind of effort and they knew it. They had chosen a trail that would exhaust us physically, leaving us vulnerable when the time came to carry out their plan. "We're almost at the lookout," Michael announced enthusiastically. But according to the map I had seen at home, we still had half an hour to go. His lie confirmed they didn't intend to take us to the official lookout. The place chosen to kill us had to be much closer. As I walked, I tried to memorize every detail of the trail, every tree and rock, thinking that if I survived I could describe it to the police. Robert did the same, and from time to time we exchanged looks full of fear and determination. "Look at that!" Emily suddenly shouted, pointing to a rock formation on the right. "That cliff has an incredible view. Let's climb up to take some special pictures." A chill ran through me. This was the place they had chosen to murder us. The cliff rose more than 100 feet above the main trail, with a more dangerous secondary path. The rocks were loose and there were few trees to hold on to. From above, a deep ravine full of sharp stones could be seen. "I'm not sure it's a good idea," I said, trying to sound natural. "That path looks dangerous for our age." But Michael was already walking toward the fork, carrying his backpack with the safety gear I knew he would never use to save us. "Come on, Margaret," he said with that persuasive voice he used to convince. "It'll only take a few minutes. Besides, Emily is right. The pictures from up there will be spectacular." The way he pronounced spectacular made me shudder. Yes, spectacular for anyone who later saw the images of our supposed accident. Robert squeezed my hand, reminding me the phone was still recording. We had to keep going. If we refused, they would find another opportunity, another place, another excuse to kill us. The climb was exhausting. The loose rocks slipped under our feet and several times I nearly fell. The worst part was realizing how perfect the spot was for a crime. An accidental fall, and there would be no way to survive or witnesses to confirm it. "We're almost there," Emily shouted from above, moving with the agility of someone who knew the route well. Michael followed her and then helped Robert and me climb the last few yards. His grip on my arms felt threatening. The lookout truly was spectacular. The whole valley, the distant mountains, and the ocean glittering on the horizon. In another circumstance it would have been a beautiful moment. Now it was the stage for a nightmare. "Come here for pictures," Michael shouted, positioning himself near the edge. "I want the valley in the background." We approached slowly, step by step toward our fate. Emily positioned herself behind us, calculating angles and distances. "Perfect," Michael said, lifting the camera. "Now hug each other and smile." Robert and I embraced, probably for the last time, while he snapped photo after photo. Each flash from the camera seemed to announce an approaching storm. "One more," Emily suggested, stepping closer. "But this time take a step back so the landscape comes out better." One step back placed us right at the edge of the cliff. Robert and I exchanged a look. The moment had come. We stepped back as told, feeling the firm ground vanish, with nothing behind but emptiness. Michael lifted the camera again, but his eyes no longer pretended affection. The mask had fallen. "Smile," he said harshly. "This will be your last picture." At that instant Emily lunged at us with outstretched arms. The plan was clear. Push us so we fell, take a few pictures of the accident, and then climb down to discover our bodies. But Robert was ready. At the last second he grabbed Emily's wrist and pulled her forward. "If we're going to die, you're coming with us," he shouted with a fury I had never heard before. For a few seconds the four of us teetered on the edge, locked in a macabre dance between life and death. Michael screamed, trying to help his wife, but the weight was too much. I felt the ground collapse and gravity drag me down. In an instant the four of us fell together, trapped in a deadly embrace, screaming as the wind whistled and the rocks rushed up at terrifying speed. In those seconds that felt eternal, I thought of David, of how he must have felt when Emily pushed him into the ravine 20 years earlier. His fear, his confusion, his betrayal when he realized his own sister had condemned him to death. The impact was brutal. I heard the crunch of bones breaking and the dull thud of my body hitting the rocks. The pain was unbearable, but worse was the metallic taste of blood in my mouth and the certainty that this time Emily had won. This time there would be no witnesses to tell the truth. But then I heard Robert's voice, weak but clear. "Margaret, don't move. Pretend you're dead." And I realized something incredible. I was still alive. The pain was so intense I thought I would lose my mind. Every fiber of my body screamed in agony. I felt blood running down my face and my clothes soaked through. But Robert's voice echoed like a divine command. "Pretend you're dead." With a strength I didn't know I had, I remained motionless, controlling even my breathing. I held my breath so it would be imperceptible. A few yards away I heard Emily and Michael groaning. They had also survived the fall, but from the sounds they seemed more injured than us. "Michael," my daughter managed to say in a broken voice, "are you okay?" Her concern for him turned my stomach. That man who saw us only as obstacles in his path to money now groaned. "I think I broke my leg. It hurts too much." "Emily, what about the old folks?" His contemptuous way of calling us confirmed what I had always known. He never considered us his family. I heard movement as if Emily was crawling toward us. My heart pounded so loudly I feared she could hear it. "They're dead," she announced after what felt like hours. "Their eyes are open, but they're not breathing." Her lie filled me with a strange hope. If they believed we were dead, maybe we had a chance. "Perfect," Michael muttered with satisfaction. "It went just as we planned." "Well, except that we also fell," Emily replied with a bitter laugh. "At least we won't have to pretend to love them anymore." They discussed their situation between groans of pain. Although injured, they could still move. The new plan was to crawl until they found help, and then tell the story that they had miraculously survived a tragic accident in which their poor parents had died. "Remember the story," Emily told him. "We were taking pictures when a rock came loose under Dad's feet. He slipped and while trying to hold on, dragged Mom down. We tried to help, but we also fell. It's important that our versions match." "I know," Michael replied. "We practiced it hundreds of times. We're the traumatized victims of a tragedy. Poor us." Their performance was so convincing that, if I didn't know the truth, anyone would have believed them. Little by little their voices faded as they crawled toward what they hoped would be salvation. When silence finally fell, Robert whispered, barely audible, "Margaret, are you okay?" I answered in the same tone. "I'm alive, though badly hurt. I broke my right leg," he confessed with a strained voice. "And I think I fractured some ribs. What about you?" I made a mental inventory of my body. My left arm throbbed with pain, my head pounded as if someone were hitting it with a hammer, my shoulder was damaged. But I was alive, and that was more than I had expected. "We're in bad shape, but alive," I told him. "The phone is still recording, but down here there's no signal." That was the most terrifying part. We had survived, but we were trapped at the bottom of a ravine, injured and cut off from the outside world. "Robert," I whispered, "before it's too late, I need you to tell me everything that really happened the night David died." He sighed as if he had been waiting 20 years for this moment. In a trembling voice he began, "That night David came to find me in the workshop. He was furious. He had bank statements in his hand, proof that Emily had been stealing money from our savings for months. First small amounts, then larger ones. David had investigated because he had noticed discrepancies. The physical pain mixed with the emotional as I listened to truths hidden for decades. David wanted to confront her that very night," Robert continued. "I tried to calm him down, to convince him to wait, but he was determined. He said he couldn't sleep knowing his younger sister was stealing from us." "And you followed him?" I asked, though I already suspected the answer. "Yes. I knew his temper when he was angry, and I had noticed something strange in Emily, a coldness that scared me. When I got to the ravine, I found them yelling at each other. David was waving the papers in her face. 'You're a thief, you're stealing from our own parents.' She denied everything, said he was crazy. My heart raced imagining my two children facing each other in the darkness. What happened then? Robert was silent for a long time. David told her that if she didn't return the money and confess, he himself would tell us. She exploded. She shouted that he had always been the favorite, that he had everything handed to him, that it was time for things to change. And then she pushed him. Tears mixed with the blood on my face. Why didn't you ever tell me? Robert sighed. Because when I got to her she was crying, trembling, repeating that it had been an accident, that she hadn't meant to do it. She begged me not to tell you anything. But you knew it was a lie, I murmured. Yes, but she was my daughter, Margaret, my only living daughter. How could I hand her over to the police? How could I destroy what was left of our family? His words hurt as much as my injuries. And the money? I pressed. She promised to pay it back little by little, said it had been a mistake, that it would never happen again. But she didn't return a single dollar. She kept stealing and I stayed silent. Every day I became more of an accomplice. At that moment we heard voices in the distance. Emily and Michael had found help. Soon the rescuers would arrive, and with them the performance of our children, the traumatized survivors of a family tragedy. The sound of helicopters mixed with the voices growing closer. Robert and I had to decide in a matter of minutes. Keep pretending we were dead until the right moment to reveal the truth, or risk being rescued along with our would-be killers. Margaret, he whispered. The phone recorded everything that happened up there. We have Michael's confession about the plan. We have Emily admitting that we're an obstacle. It's all there. But if they discover we're alive now, they could destroy the evidence before it reaches the authorities. He was right. If they learned we had survived and heard their confessions, they would find a way to silence us forever. This time it wouldn't be an accident, but something direct and definitive. We had to wait for the perfect moment. They're down here. Emily's voice shouted from above. They're my parents, please hurry. Her performance was flawless, with a tone of pain and desperation that, if I didn't know the truth, would have sounded real. Ma'am, stay calm, replied an authoritative voice, surely the leader of the rescue team. We're going to descend to evaluate you. Can you and your husband move? I heard the sound of ropes and harnesses being prepared for the descent. Michael perfected his role as the grieving son-in-law. I can't believe it, he sobbed. We were so happy taking pictures. Everything happened so fast. A rock came loose and they fell. Each word was a dagger because I knew he would repeat those lies to the police, the press, anyone who would listen. The voices of the rescuers grew closer, along with the clinking of gear and the thud of boots against the rock. Robert discreetly squeezed my hand, reminding me I had to keep pretending. Here they are, one of the rescuers shouted. 2 people at the bottom of the ravine. A man leaned over us and began to examine us. I kept my eyes closed, my breathing so shallow it barely existed. I felt his fingers searching for a pulse in my neck, and his ear next to my mouth. This one still has a weak pulse, he announced, referring to Robert. The woman? I'm not sure. I need the medical team immediately. My heart raced. Our plan was working. In the following minutes they worked on us. I felt them place an oxygen mask on me, immobilize me on a stretcher. All the time I had to resist the urge to open my eyes, to ask for help, to stop pretending. The man is stable though critical, one of them reported. The woman is in serious condition, pulse almost imperceptible. We need to transfer them to the hospital. Perfect. There we would have the chance to speak with the authorities far from Emily and Michael's control. During the ascent on the stretcher I heard my daughter's sobs and the words of comfort people gave her. You were so brave, someone told her. It's a miracle you're okay. If only they knew that the real miracle was that Robert and I were still alive to share our story. In the medical helicopter I could feel Robert's presence on the stretcher nearby. The paramedics focused on keeping him stable. From their words I understood he was in worse shape than I was. I feared he would die before revealing everything. Ma'am, a paramedic told me, if you can hear me, hold on. We'll be at the hospital in minutes. His voice was genuinely compassionate, a brutal contrast to the falseness of my own family. When we arrived at the hospital in Houston, chaos erupted immediately. Doctors and nurses rushed back and forth, giving orders. They took me into the emergency room. I had to keep pretending to be unconscious, But I also needed to find someone I could trust. Doctor, I heard a nurse say, the vital signs are strange. The pulse is stronger than expected for someone in this condition. My heart skipped. They had discovered me. It happens in cases of extreme trauma, the doctor replied. The body has mysterious ways of clinging to life. Let's keep strict monitoring. Emily made a sound that imitated a sob, but to my ears it was a sigh of relief. Can we see them? Michael asked. Just for a minute. We need to say goodbye in case something happens. The doctor agreed, and I heard footsteps approaching. It was the most dangerous moment. I had to convince them I was really dying. I felt my daughter's hand on mine. Mom, she whispered. If you can hear me, I want you to know I love you. I'm so sorry. Her words sounded sweet but carried poison. Michael leaned in on the other side. Dear Margaret, he murmured. You've been like a mother to me. We'll never forget you. Lies. The only thing they would not forget was that they had tried to kill me. Then Emily leaned to my ear and whispered something that froze my blood. I hope you've learned your lesson. You should never have asked so many questions about our finances. Some truths are better left buried, just like David. Her confession echoed in my mind. She herself had mentioned my son. I didn't have a recorder at that moment, but a nurse in the room had heard everything. She was a young woman named Megan, according to her badge. I saw her freeze, realizing the implications of those words. What did you say about David? Michael asked, surprised. Emily tensed. Nothing. I meant that Mom always wondered what happened that night. It doesn't matter anymore, he replied, but his voice betrayed tension. They both realized they had said too much, and Emily ended the moment. Let's go, the doctors need space. After they left, Megan approached my bed and whispered, Ma'am, I know you can hear me. What I heard isn't normal. If you're in danger, tell me however you can. Her urgent voice gave me hope. Very slowly, I barely moved my index finger. It was just a small movement, but Megan noticed immediately. My God, she whispered. She's pretending to be unconscious. I moved my finger again, this time twice. She leaned closer. I'm going to pretend to check the monitors. If you're in danger because of those people who just left, move your finger 3 times. Without hesitation, I did it. Megan held her breath. It was them, she murmured and looked at me again. Pretending to check the 4. She processed what she had just discovered. Then she came back and said softly, I'll speak to the head doctor, but keep pretending until we can protect you. I moved my finger once in agreement. The minutes felt endless until she returned with the head doctor and, to my surprise, 2 police officers. Ma'am, the doctor said in a low voice, Nurse Megan told us what happened. You're safe now, the officers are here to protect you. Can you open your eyes? One of the officers asked. I slowly opened my eyelids. The light blinded me for a moment, but soon I could see their worried faces. Thank God, Megan murmured. I thought I was losing my mind. Ma'am, said a middle-aged man with a serious expression, I'm Detective Harris. We know you're in danger. Can you tell us what happened on the mountain? My voice was barely a whisper. My daughter and her husband pushed us. The following hours were a whirlwind of statements and recordings. I told Detective Harris everything. David's death, Emily's thefts, the pressure to change the will, and finally the plan to kill us. The most important thing was the recording on Robert's phone. Does your husband have proof? He asked, eyes shining. Yes, I answered. Everything is on his phone. Confessions, plans, every word. The detective went immediately to Robert's room. My husband, though weak, handed over the device without hesitation. Here it all is, he said. 20 years of lies and the truth about what happened today. While the technicians analyzed the contents, Emily and Michael remained in the waiting room, pretending to be devastated relatives. They didn't know their act was minutes away from ending. The recording is clear, the detective announced an hour later. We have explicit confessions about David's murder, proof of theft, and evidence of attempted premeditated murder against you. Will you arrest them here? I asked in fear. Yes, he replied. Officers are already in position. As soon as we have the order, we'll take them in. You will be under protection. The irony struck me. Downstairs, my own children were receiving condolences for our supposed deaths, while upstairs their world of lies was collapsing. There's more, he added with concern. The detective pulled out a folder. We reviewed their finances. Not only are they bankrupt, they also owe money to dangerous loan sharks. Your inheritance was their only way out. A shiver ran down my spine. We weren't just obstacles. We were their salvation. And our grandchildren? I asked in pain. They will be under temporary custody of social services. You may apply for guardianship once you recover, he explained kindly. The idea of raising the children of our would-be murderers was painful, but it was also the only way to salvage something good from the nightmare. An officer entered with documents. The warrants are ready. From my window I saw the police discreetly approach. The moment I had waited for 20 years had come. Emily and Michael, came the firm voice of an officer. You are under arrest for the murder of David and for attempted homicide against Margaret and Robert. The silence was sepulchral until my daughter screamed hysterically. What are you talking about? We're the victims. Our parents died in an accident. No, the officer replied calmly. They are alive and have provided proof of your crimes. There was a second of silence, followed by Michael's shout. That's impossible. We saw them die. They were dead. His involuntary confession was recorded. Emily tried to save herself. It was all his idea, I didn't want to. And Michael, desperate, shouted. You were the one who planned the cliff. In minutes, their years-long alliance collapsed. An hour later, Detective Harris returned to my room. They're under arrest now. Both are blaming each other, which strengthens the case. Then he showed me a small recorder. We found this in your daughter's purse. They were recording conversations with you, probably to collect proof that you suspected something. My blood ran cold. What does that mean? I asked. The detective sighed. It means that even while they were planning your death, they also didn't trust you. It means she knew you were beginning to discover the truth, Detective Harris explained. The trip to the mountains wasn't spontaneous. It was a response to your suspicions. In one of the recordings, Michael can be heard saying, "We need to act quickly before they go to the police." The coldness of that calculation took my breath away. They hadn't just planned to kill us, they were also watching us, weighing every word and movement as if we were mice in an experiment. There's more, he continued. Your daughter not only owed money to dangerous loan sharks. She also forged your signature on documents to try to access your accounts. If you had died in that ravine, she would have had immediate access to everything. Each revelation was another stab. My own daughter not only wanted to kill me, she had been stealing from me for years, forging my signature, destroying all trust. How much money did she steal in total? I asked fearfully. About $10,000 over the last 3 years, he answered. Small amounts that seemed imperceptible, but added together they represented a fortune. The money Robert and I had saved over decades of work had fueled our daughter's life of luxury. The days in the hospital were a whirlwind of police interviews, visits from lawyers, and calls from journalists. The press called it the most terrible family betrayal of the decade. Reporters came from all over the country. My sister Susan traveled from Dallas and hugged me in tears. I always suspected something was off with Emily after David's death, but I never imagined it would come to this. Her words gave me some comfort. My instincts hadn't been entirely blind. And the children? I asked. I saw them yesterday, Susan replied sadly. They're confused, asking why their parents aren't coming back. They're too young to understand. Miss Carter, the lawyer we hired, came to give us news about the case. The case is solid, she assured. With the recordings, the confessions, and the financial evidence, it will be nearly impossible for them to avoid long sentences. But then she added, their attorneys are trying to negotiate a lighter sentence, presenting it as a crime of passion. A crime of passion? I exclaimed indignantly. They planned it for weeks, bought equipment, chose the perfect place. Miss Carter nodded. We have proof of premeditation, but they will argue financial desperation. The mere idea that they could receive a reduced sentence filled me with rage. What can we do? I asked. Testify, she answered. Your testimony will be essential for the jury to understand the true nature of what they did. But I warn you, it will be devastating to face your daughter in court. She was right. The thought of looking Emily in the eyes, of hearing her lawyers justify the unjustifiable, was unbearable. But I had to do it for David, for us, and for my grandchildren. 3 weeks after the arrest, Robert and I returned home. He still needed crutches and I had my arm in a sling. Everything was just as we had left it the day of the supposed family outing. Dishes in the sink, the bed unmade, wilted flowers on the table. As if time had stopped at the moment our normal life ended. "Do you think we'll ever be happy again?" I asked him that night. Robert hugged me with his good arm and sighed. "I don't know, Margaret. But we're alive. We have the truth on our side. And for the first time in 20 years there are no more secrets." The trial began 6 months later. The day I took the stand I looked my daughter in the eyes. I saw no remorse, no pain. I saw a stranger, cold and calculating. "Emily," I said from the witness stand, "I don't know who you are, but you're no longer my daughter. My daughter died the night you killed David. What has lived since then is a monster that, unknowingly, I helped create." The jury deliberated for 2 days before finding them guilty. Intentional homicide for David's death and aggravated attempted homicide against us. Emily and Michael received 30 years in prison without the possibility of parole. A year later, Robert and I began the process of adopting our grandchildren. They are beautiful, innocent children. Every night, when I put them to bed, I tell them stories about their Uncle David. About his kindness, his dream of becoming an architect, how he always tried to protect the ones he loved. I don't tell them about the betrayal or the ravine. Someday they will know, but not now. Sometimes I still wake up sweating and screaming, reliving the fall. Robert has nightmares too. We hold each other in the dark, reminding ourselves that we survived, that the deception was finally uncovered. We sold the old house. Too many memories, too many ghosts. We bought a smaller one by the ocean, where the sound of the waves helps us sleep. A new house for a new beginning. The scar on my shoulder aches when the weather changes, but it reminds me that I am still here, that justice finally prevailed. Robert's knee never fully healed. Those are our physical scars, but the emotional ones are much deeper. Sometimes I look at old photographs. Emily smiling at her 10th birthday, David teaching her to ride a bike, the 4 of us together at a picnic on the beach. I try to understand how something so beautiful could turn into something so monstrous. How did I not see the signs, those small moments that might have warned me of what was coming? But then I remember that love makes us blind, that many times we don't want to see the truth because it hurts too much, that we trust the ones we love even when we should question them. I never went to visit Emily in prison. I cannot look her in the eyes after she killed my son and tried to kill me. Robert went once, but he came back quieter than ever. He only said that she showed no remorse, only anger for having been caught. Michael sent letters asking for forgiveness, saying he had been under Emily's influence, that he hadn't been himself. We never answered. Some betrayals are too great to forgive. The years will pass, our grandchildren will grow, perhaps the pain will ease, but the truth will remain. The truth of how greed can corrupt even the most sacred family ties, how silence can protect monsters, how sometimes we need to pretend to be dead in order to live in truth. Today, when I walk along the beach in Miami Beach with Robert by my side and our grandchildren running ahead, I feel an unexpected peace. It isn't the happiness of before. It's something different, deeper. The certainty that we survived the worst life could throw at us and still found reasons to smile. And somewhere I am sure David is watching us, seeing that his death was not in vain, that the truth, even after 20 years, the truth could no longer be hidden, that those of us who loved him survived to tell his story. And that, in the end, is also a form of justice. Now, if you enjoyed this story, click on the next video appearing on the screen, because in it you'll see a tale of betrayal and upheaval like you've never seen before.